to the hunt, and today we shall be hunting the Zinogre. Who's a good little pup? It's the Zinogre, y'all. One of my very favorite monsters in the New World, and or of the Old World to be more specific. But what a fantastic addition to the monster roster of the New World in itself and in Iceborne in general. If only for a couple of factors. The one of the first things I want to mention is that Zinogre is a fanged wyvern. And most of you will go like, well, why is that specifically important? If you look at the Fanged Wyvern roster for the New World, you have Great Gyros, Great Jagras, Dodogama, Otogaron, Tobikadachi, and maybe I'm missing like one or two in that category. You have nothing. Fanged Wyverns are very, very low level outside of maybe Ebony, Otogaron, or Otogaron. If you want to argue that one, I'd say that they're more mid-tier monsters, even Ebony in certain scenarios. So to have a high-level fight with Fanged Wyvern means that by the time you fight Zinogre, which is post-game, you're gonna have a lot more of interesting scenarios while trying to fight him and have a much more different fight than you would normally. Which is why I love him so much. The idea that you fight a high-level Fanged Wyvern that even in lore is quite powerful. And also, I believe Zinogre was also a poster boy at one point for the 3rd generation. So I just really like this in general. He's not quite an Elder Dragon monster level threat, but he's near that. And I like the fact that a post-game monster, just like the one I'm gonna see next tomorrow, the Yongaruga, is a high-level monster that isn't Elder Dragon specifically, but is on par or somewhat similar to those levels of danger during the fight. Even in lore in some instances. Well, maybe not about the Yongaruga, but Zinogre, surely. With that said, it comes also with a lot, and I mean a lot of moves that you wouldn't see on other monsters that you will constantly keep fighting during the late game of Iceborne specifically. And what I love about it is that there's a lot of uses of stealth, swipes, and just generic moves that are fantastic to go for. His Pounce Attack and his Cloud Closer are surprisingly hard to anticipate. It reminds me a lot of the Barioth, if I'm gonna be perfectly frank. It's not exactly done the same way, but I love it. The Slam Jam that we're seeing right now, I love it. There's a move where he literally slings himself onto the air and backflop the ground where your last position was at. And as he turns 180 degrees, that places his head on a different pattern, meaning that if you know where to position during the Slam Jam, you can get a lot of damage out of that. I love it so much. The pacing of the fight is surprisingly well done. It's a very high risk, high reward type of scenario, which I will go into later on. There's lots of moves that you can punish. So, example, when the Zinogre is charging for its charged state, you have great ability to punish him. You can easily wallbang him if you know what you're doing. You can decharge him if you're using elemental power. You can go into a loop of the fight. I really like that. And there's just a lot of also really great positioning abilities. Here we go, he's gonna do Slam Dunk! And as you saw, he turned 180 degrees, meaning that his forelegs and head are in different position. Also, he has just general great hit zone value that just makes the fight fun in general. There's about 1 or 2 moves that I maybe don't like out of the whole move kit that's maybe around 15. And that's the hip check. I don't like the hip check, but I don't like the hip check on any of almost all monsters, and electro balls can be hard to dodge, but that's mostly on me rather than just flat on me just not liking the move. So a lot of compliments have been tossed out. So let me talk to you about the pacing of the fight. How the fight goes is that you'll enter the arena. The Zinogre will either be discharged or already in a charge state, depending of how the quest is set up. If the Zinogre is not in a charged state, he's decharged, what will happen is that he'll go for certain patterns of movement. Well, he'll attack a couple of times. He can't chain his attack too much, won't have good recovery, and can follow up with attacks too well. So what it'll do is that it'll charge bugs off on his back, attracting bugs and basically charging himself up. Once he does that, he's staying still for a couple of seconds, meaning you can hit the forelegs, the head, or you can clutch claw his head to tenderize and or wall bang him. If you're able to successfully wall bang the Zinogre, it'll charge himself and go into enraged state instantly. Once he does that, if you're using an elemental weapon like I am using, what you can do is you can depower him by hitting, I believe, the head and the forelegs, or just having a certain threshold of damage when it comes to elemental damage. And that will depower him, topple him for free punish, and also de-enrage him so you can repeat the whole flow again. So usually if you're really good at fighting the Zinogre, the pacing of the fight is wait for him to go for a charge up, punish, then once he goes into a range tank, aim for the hind leg, the forelegs and the head to deal as much damage as possible. Make him topple from this decharge, just like I'm doing here. You see how you decharge? And from there you punish as much as possible while he's in that state. And as soon as you have the opportunity for him to charge back, punish by wallbanging him instantly to go so he can go into a recharge fashion. Because the thing in the matter is, he takes far more damage in a charged state than he does in any other situation, which is why I'm saying this, which might as well go into the math right now. So, when we look at the chart of the Zinogre, it's quite a stacked one, but only because of its charge and its charge state, its second phase, essentially. With an average of 39 in cunning damage, his head is looking at a healthy 45, but while in the charge set, it's at 65, which is far better. It's somewhat similar to the Volcana, if there's ever a comparison to make. The next at 40, one charge at 60, torso 30, torso charge 25, back 40, back charge 40, forelegs 40, charge 45, hind legs 30, hind legs charge at 25, which is the exception to the rule, and the tail goes from 30 to 45. So if you look at this real fast, you're going to see that the main point of contact that you'll ever go for during this entire fight is going to be the head and the forelegs. If you have a right-reaching weapon like the longsword, like the switch axe, I keep saying this constantly, going for the head is your man. The rest is fine, you can deal with that, it just won't result in any much damage. And also, a thing about the tail is that if you hit the tail from the underside, it's much more durable than if you hit it from the top, meaning that you have a greater chance of dealing damage if you aim for the fur. That is essentially the math. As you can also see, is that the elemental weaknesses go up once he's charged, so that's how you fight him. Let him charge, deal damage, knock him off of that, repeat the process. The mat says it too, I said it too, there's no other way to look at it. Let's move on. From there, I want to talk quickly about a really cool little mechanic that pretty much nobody uses, but if you're in lower level of play, like it's your couple of first time fighting with Zinogre and you don't have a full build, this is what you should be doing when fighting with Zinogre. If you are able to topple or trip Zinogre, so he's on the ground, wrangling like a 5-year-old, yeah? What you need to do is get your catching net, go in front of his back, so like, you can see the fur on his back, and catch the Fulgur Bugs off of his back. It's such a neat concept! You can decharge Zinogre by catching the Fulgur Bugs that are basically charging him off of his fur. What an amazing concept and mechanic for a monster that ain't too useful for higher levels of play because of your damage, of your damage creep. But oh my god, that's such a neat detail and a great little mechanic for people that are trying to fight the Zinogre that aren't too comfortable dealing with him in its charge state. And also is a way to regulate the phases of the fight that lowers the risk but also lower the rewards of damage you could potentially do with PS. What an amazing little mechanic. I cannot tell you how much I love this little detail and that I wish more monsters had little mechanics like this where it's not inconsequential to higher levels of play but can help lower players level the playing field so And it's also fairly obtuse that most people wouldn't think of that, but it's completely in line with the lore of the Zinogre, which is, it's not a lightning monster. It attracts the bugs that are stacked with electricity that charges the Zinogre up through contact with its fur. My god, is it such a beautiful little concept that I just flat out cannot get enough of. And there's a couple of other ones in the game that are resembling that, just like mining off the back of a Neurogon, for example, is a pretty good one. But this one is up there as one of my absolute favorite. Go and try in your quest. You will find it to be somewhat enjoyable to completely decharge Zinogre just from catching bugs off of its back. I really, really like that. The other thing I want to mention, other major thing I want to mention before this episode wraps up is the theme of the Zinogre. He has such an amazing, wonderfully realized theme. Just like the Glavenus, just like the Nargacuga, just like the Volcana, just like the Namiel. My god, Iceborne has been kicking ass when it comes to themes. And I love the inherently Eastern aesthetic sound of his theme. I love the heavy percussions of this little twang of like a string instrument or wooden instrument at the beginning of his theme. I love all these little elements. I love how charged it is. I love how it's somewhat aggressive but also soothing at the same time. I love how it's dignified as if it was telling the Zinogre is a dignified monster, just like an actual wolf that is distinguished in itself. And I really, really liked it. So Zinogre overall, a very aggressive monster, a really cool one, but you gotta watch out for everything it does. Place trap as much as possible, since it's fairly weak to Pitfall Trap, and you'll be fine.